But it was kind of like the scene from Basic Instinct where she was kind of sat there folding and unholding her legs and kind of lowering her top, and that was quite cool. Been a long time without you. Been a long time without love. Everything reminds me of you, but everything is not. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the Fun, Love and Money channel. Have I got a really interesting story for you guys today? So, following up on my last videos, this is about one of the most fun, interesting jobs I've ever done. I've done a couple of videos about shit jobs. So I did one when I was working at NTL, or should I say NT Hell, and another video where I was working at Heathrow Airport, which were two shit jobs. So I'm going to tell you about one of the most interesting, fun jobs I ever did. And this was when I was 19. It was kind of at a transition phase in my life. So I was working through a temp agency through Office Angels that were based in Hammersmith. And I ended up getting a contract which lasted for about a year, actually on the White City estate. And for those of you who don't know, the White City estate is an inner London estate in West London in Shepherd's Bush. Not quite inner London, but kind of as central London's expanded out, you would kind of say it is. It was quite a rough estate. And for me growing up in Chiswick in a very white middle class area, I'd never actually seen in real life, never actually been on an estate, and it gave me the opportunity to meet and mix with some really interesting people and people that I would never have had the opportunity to meet or mix with. And it was the kind of thing that you would only see like on TV or you'd hear about in the news, and generally the press was quite negative. And it was a fantastic experience. So I started there, as I said, I was only 19. And my role was as a customer services officer. And what that would entail was we'd be sat at the front desk in the housing office on the front line, and the tenants would kind of come in to the housing office for various reasons. So it could be anything from rent arrears, which was quite common, to they had an issue in their house. So it could have been their drain was blocked. They had an issue with the electrics, the toilets were blocked. Absolutely anything. Or one of the more interesting ones was after the police would do the dawn raids, they'd kind of put their doors in, and then we'd have to kind of sort that out, which was all fascinating. So some really funny, interesting stories from there. So the actual housing estate, the staff were predominantly of Caribbean origin. So they were kind of first and second generation people from sort of Jamaica, St. Kitts, Barbados, St. Vincent. So there was a whole kind of mix there. And what you tended to find is it was a great environment. It was really buzzy. The people were really good. There was a lot socially going on there, which was really, really nice. And people were always having a laugh. We were working hard, but we were always having a laugh. The atmosphere was really good. We used to go out regularly for kind of drinks. If it was someone's birthday or something was happening, and we'd kind of go out for dinner or we'd go out for drinks after. And a lot of people were quite into sports, which I really liked. So there was a netball team, which was a mixed netball team, which I really enjoyed playing on. And we used to kind of play in little matches. And what was good for me with that was that normally, having played rugby and football and boxing and things like that, it was just literally all dudes. But it was quite nice to kind of do sports with women as well. And a lot of the women were quite sporty there, which was really nice. And then we had a football team there as well that I used to play for as well. So we used to play like once or twice a week. And then we'd play like occasionally matches as well, like kind of friendly matches, which I also really enjoyed doing there, which was really, really nice. The staff, as I said, were mostly Caribbean background, mostly educated, kind of middle class people. A lot of them were into kind of sort of church and into their families and things like that. And one of the things, though, that wasn't very good, and what's kind of prompted me to talk about this, is something that's been coming up a lot in my YouTube feed around what people are calling black fatigue. And what I'm interpreting that to be is the unfortunate negative stigma that is given to the black community, where black people are kind of stereotyped by this kind of ghetto culture, and people are wrongly stereotyping all black people in line with this ghetto culture. And what I used to see there was I used to see a lot of the black staff, predominantly from the Caribbean countries, would actually be quite nasty and really look down their noses at the black tenants. And I mean, I wasn't a judgmental person, I never was, but the thing is that people can be in various situations for various different reasons. And a lot of the time, yes, the tenants were at fault because a lot of people would come in with attitude. It wasn't just the Afro-Caribbean tenants that would come in with bad attitude, but the way that the Afro-Caribbean staff would actually treat the tenants of Afro-Caribbean origin actually was quite crimson for me. And the way I would treat them is I would treat everybody like they were a human. They would come in, and if they were quite upset, I'd be quite empathetic, and I used to get through and help loads of them with their kind of problems. But yeah, it did bother me a little bit at the time, and I think it was literally just because they probably felt that it was people from the estate or people that were having these kind of issues and these kind of attitudes that were kind of bringing the rest of the black community down. So I think that they were kind of standing up against that. But personally, I didn't really like it. Really interesting stories. As I said, it was a completely different life to anything I'd seen. And at the time, I think, if I'm brutally honest, looking back on it, I had a bit of a kind of a ghetto girl thing. So I dated a couple of the girls on the estate, which I don't think the managers and things were very happy about. But yeah, you know, you're young and you're 19 and you're kind of finding your way in life. So it was quite cool. So I dated one girl who was a single mother, and we kind of saw each other a few times. And I think she had a son who was about sort of 3 or 4. She was a few years older than me. She was in her mid-20s. I think she was 25 or 26. And what was interesting with her and with the whole situation was that for me, I'd never kind of been exposed to the kind of day-to-day problems that people on the estate would have. So, for example, with her, she was a really nice girl. What she would do is she would have kind of problems with her baby daddy and problems with her benefits not going in and problems with money and problems with trying to get back into work. And these were kind of things that I had never kind of really been exposed to. And then I ended up dating somebody quite interesting, actually. So she was quite a few years older than me. She was, I think, 29, 30 maybe, and I was 19. So she was about 10 or 11 years older. Absolutely stunning. Like literally head-turningly stunning. I don't know why she was interested in me, but hey-ho, whatever. And she actually worked as a lap dancer. I think it was in Raymond's Review Bar in Soho, which was a lap dancing club. And she had quite a lot of money. But the thing with her was that she really had zero money management skills. So she would be complaining about not having money or having to help her mum out or needing to do this or needing to pay the rent or whatever. But when she would come into money, she would be really bad at managing it. So she used to want to spend all the money on designer gear and watches and jewelry and bags and shoes. And yeah, again, completely bizarre to anything I'd ever experienced. And yeah, that kind of fizzled out, which I think was quite a good thing, actually, because she was a bit too much for me to handle at the time. So yeah, if I'm honest. And then a really interesting one. So you used to have a lot of, obviously, in that kind of estate, you used to have a lot of prostitutes, pimps, drug dealers, drug addicts. And there was a prostitute who used to live on the estate, and she took a bit of a liking to me. And she used to come into the estate, and yeah, she was also quite an attractive lady. But yeah, really like very rough in many ways. And she used to kind of come into the estate, and she took a real like shining to me. And she always used to wait specifically to see me. And a lot of the time she would say to me, I want to go into, because we had sort of rooms where we could meet with the tenants confidentially. And I remember on one occasion, she turned into the office looking absolutely amazing. Nice big blue eyes, nice curly hair. And she was wearing this skin tight dress. And this dress had a zip that would literally zip all the way down to the middle, and she used to kind of zip it down very low. And she kind of took me into the room, and she was trying it on, laying it really thick. I mean, I was so young and so inexperienced, so I was kind of quite intimidated by it at the time. But it was kind of like the scene from Basic Instinct, where she was kind of sat there folding and unholding her legs and kind of lowering her top, and that was quite cool. And actually, she ended up inviting me up to her flat for some excuse or something that she wanted me to check. I think she said that she thought the shower upstairs was it. I can't remember the exact story. And yeah, she tried it on me, and I think, as I said, I was like so inexperienced and so out of my depth that I kind of made an excuse and left. That was quite a funny story. Another one that was quite interesting was with the police. So what the police used to do was, generally on a Monday morning, about 3 or 4 a.m., they used to do their dawn raids. So what they would do is they'd literally go through the estate and put the doors in of any kind of known criminals. They'd arrest the criminals and search the house and take away suspicious or stolen goods, or goods that they believed to have been purchased from the proceeds of crime. And it used to be quite interesting, because we'd then obviously have to go and get these doors boarded up. So it was really busy for the contractors to get those set up. And sometimes I used to think, well, yeah, they deserve it. But what was actually really sad with that was that a lot of the time, these people would live with their grandparents, or they would live with their girlfriends, and they would be completely innocent, but they would literally have their flats turned completely upside down. So on one particular occasion, it was really sad. It was quite an old couple. I mean, they must have been in their 70s at the time, and their grandson had a lot of problems, and he had come into the estate before, and he was quite a dodgy guy, and you'd kind of see him around, openly kind of drug dealing on the streets. And I think he had a nice car. He had a Golf GTI or something at the time. He was a pretty nasty piece of work, but his grandparents were really lovely, and I think his parents hadn't been able to look after him or anything like that. So his grandparents then ended up taking him in, and I mean, I remember the police had put his grandparents' house in completely. And what had ended up happening was, other drug dealers, and they used to do this quite regularly, when they knew somebody's house was raided, what they would do is the other drug dealers and criminals on the estate, they would realise, oh, so-and-so's flat's been raided. They literally just go in there and loot whatever they could from it. So this elderly couple had their house put in by the police. Obviously, the grandson had been arrested, and they literally, other people had kind of gone in through their house and nicked all of their stuff. And it was actually really, really sad, because they were kind of an innocent party in this, but they'd kind of been caught up in what was really kind of not their fault. So that was quite a sad story. But yeah, literally no 2 days were the same. I used to come back with crazy interesting stories about what would happen. People would kind of kick off in the estate. I'd go in and sort of tell everyone the kind of stories of what had happened today. And again, as I said, it was just a completely different world to what anyone that I'd ever known or been associated with had seen. Another one that was quite strange, actually, and something, again, that's kind of quite current now, is one time we had, I think it was either the National Front or the BNP, actually come into the office mob-handed. And what had actually happened was that one of the tenants was being evicted, and the tenant had run the narrative that he was being evicted because they were going to give his flat to a refugee or a foreign couple or something, family or something like that. I couldn't remember the exact details, but the true story was that it was kind of their family home, and he was a son in his, I think, mid-20s probably at the time, and they were kind of generationally on benefits. So we had a lot of those where parents were on benefits, and then the kids kind of stayed in the flat and they went on to benefits, and that was the way they lived. So they were kind of generationally benefits. And what had happened is the father had passed away, so it was just the son who was living in this flat, and it was a 3-bedroom flat, and obviously the council couldn't justify giving a 3-bedroom flat just to one guy to live in. So what had ended up happening was that they had kind of evicted this guy. Nobody knew who was going to get the flat afterwards, but the narrative had been spun amongst the right-wing racists that it was going to be given to like refugees or whatever. So a load of the National Front came in and started kicking off and threatened to smash the office. And I think a load of the guys came out from the back office, and we kind of fronted these guys out, and then they ended up leaving. Kind of more bark than bite, I think. But yeah, definitely a really interesting job. Unfortunately, I didn't get to stay there permanently. I'd applied for the job permanently, wasn't successful, and was kind of advised to go and apply to stay in housing in another office. But I didn't. I spoke to some of the older housing officers, and they had said to me, look, you're young, there's probably more potential going into the corporate sector. So I decided to then move on to working at NTHEL, NTR Telecoms, which is one of the videos I've listed further. But the take home with this, I think, is that if you find a job that you find interesting and that you enjoy, it's always worth staying there. And I think that that's really important. And it goes back to the video I made earlier about the shit job carousel and avoiding getting locked into that. So if you do find a job that you enjoy and you are stimulated and you enjoy it, even if it's a few grand less, always stick with that job, always take that job. Keep your eyes open, but you're in a strong position if you're in that kind of job. And the thing about money is that even if it's a few £1,000s more, once Mr. HMRC gets his hand on it, what actually comes into your account at the end of the month is probably not worth the hassle. So that's my take home from that. A great, interesting job. If you want to hear more stories from the housing estate, then let me know and I'll gladly share them with you. Thanks a lot for watching. If you've made it this far, please like, comment and subscribe. Take care. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.